All right.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I have a special guest here today, and he's got a spectacular story. And I'm going to let him tell this story because it will be way better than if I tell it. He's been around on many, many YouTube channels recently, telling his story because it's our stories that matter. It's our stories that we tell that help other people to identify. It's like, wow, if that worked for Thomas, that might work for me. And so that's why we're sharing this story today. So I just ask you to, have a real open ear and any ideas that you had in the past of how things need to go, maybe just lay that aside for a moment because some of the things that we'll be talking about might be different than what you've done before. So, Thomas, I just ask you to share your story. Tell us, how what the progression has been here and where you've been at for the last while.
Okay, well, I just started doing fully carnivore. I've been carnivore on and off for many years. Actually, I started actually watching Dr. Barry and Bella back almost like 4 years ago, back when my mom was still alive, and she passed away in 2021. So, and my mom used to have a crush on Dr. Barry, like majorly.
He'd be flattered.
So yeah, we kind of did that keto thing and all that stuff. And she gave up because of the fact, and this is why I kind of say this to everybody, that, like her why was weight loss and she wasn't losing any weight, but she was doing so much better on everything else. Like she had metastatic breast cancer or metastatic breast cancer. I'm sorry, I always
Right.
mispronounce it. And it went to the bones and she like had a hard time going up and down stairs and all that not. And but when she went keto, she actually was able to go up and down stairs. She was able to go around the track, so
Wow.
all these improvements were happening to her. But yet the why was not. Her weight loss why was not happening for her. So she gave up on it and she dropped it and she started eating the bad foods and stuff like that. But I still kind of had that belief system in it, so it's sort of like seeded from there. And eventually I finally, I be carnivore and then because of rehabs or because of depression, a lot of times because I live right above a chocolate shop. So,
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, yeah.
Of all
Uh,
places, eh?
of all places to live above. So normally my thing would have been two things I would have gotten when I did cheat. I would either get an Oreo, just a plain Oreo fudge covered cookie, and a cup of coffee, and that would satisfy me. That would be enough to kind of like ease my tension. And at one time I had to have a lot more than that, but if I was really really bad, I would get a brownie. It would either
Right.
be Oreo, like cookies and cream, fudge, or
Mhm.
peanut butter. And I get a brownie and a cup of coffee. And the reason why I got it was because if you got that, the cup of coffee and the brownie, and then you did the 15% tip, it came up 444. And I figure with the Trinity numbers that it always felt like my mom was with me, like an angel with me over my
Right.
shoulders. I was going through
Yeah.
a lot of difficulty. So it just made sense. But then I finally figured, like, wait, it doesn't really make that much sense. Like, first off, I'm kind of forcing the number because I already know it's going to become 444. So I was like, maybe that doesn't really work for that, because it's like sort of like you got to see the numbers unexpectedly. And
Right.
so
I
I
get you.
sort of
With
stuck.
angel numbers,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I was like, okay, like maybe I just. But what happened was I did Christmas with my family, and obviously I cheated, and I cheated going to my sister's house for Christmas for I went for a week to take care of the dog, and so that whole 3 months my sugars were going a little bit higher, my A1C went higher. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what? I need to commit a lot more than just 1 month at a time to carnivore or 3 weeks at a time or whatever. So I said, this new year, new me, but what can I do that makes things different? And I thought, what? I think I'm going to just start talking to the community. I think I'm just going to start going into the chats. And and I think that's the missing element that we don't think of. And what happened was I was on a chat with Carrie, one of his lives, and basically had a contest, and I won the contest. And I won a
Oh,
free membership to Live. And and I sort of just, even though I'm sort of on a budget, and even though I have a hard time financially, I think I could put aside $30,
yeah.
and so that's what I did. And then for a while there, I was with Mitch, but I kind of find that I really don't know if I want to really be a member of Mitch's channel, not because I don't like Mitch, I love Mitch, but because I think he'd do better with the buy me a coffee than he would be with the member, if the
Mm.
member thinks out of it. So I think I'm just going to buy, like, once a month, just buy him a coffee, at least
Yeah.
one coffee.
And
And
Mitch is old man carnivore for anybody that
old guy,
doesn't
yeah,
know.
old guy carnivore,
Yeah.
yeah.
Old guy carnivore.
Um,
Yeah.
and then a few months later, or not even a few months later, or almost a month later, okay, maybe at the most, I had a question for Dr. Phil on Bella. And I don't know if I really should be saying this or not, but I do, and I give her credit where credit's due. And I had a question, and it was such a long question. It kind of like, it was like, you ever notice how like it cuts off when you do the
Yeah.
chats, and then
Yeah.
you have to continue? Well, I had to continue like 4 or 5 times. So it was
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, this is a pretty long question. This is pretty involved. It's one of those things like where you know that you have the question, and then like something else comes up and you just want to ask that with it. So I finally said to them, I said, "Do you mind if I just send you an email? I think that would be a lot better and a lot more prudent." So I sent them an email with my story, pretty much the same letter I sent to Carrie, because I actually sent Carrie a letter before all this happened, just to see
Mhm.
his response. Obviously, we all know Carrie, and
Yes.
Carrie was very genuine with his
Carrie
response.
Mann, Homestead How, and HealingHumanity.life, the documentary that's being created. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing guy. He really is. And I love his whole family, Jen and everybody. Well, so I do the email to SBG, and Miss Lindy actually contacts me and
Mhm.
pretty much says, we would like to give you the membership. So I'm thinking it's just for the month.
Yeah.
I think anybody would, like, oh, you're giving me a free month. That's great. Let me see how I like it and stuff like that. Well, then it goes down, and somebody is actually offering to pay for my membership
Oh,
ongoing. Well, they went to Bell, and Bell's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. He gets lifetime membership for free already. So it wasn't a monthly membership they were offering me. It was a lifetime membership they were offering
wow. Isn't that a
me.
precious gift?
Yeah. And so I kind of find Carnivore to be very, very giving. Like, you
Yeah.
don't realize it until you're in it, but it's a very giving thing. And you can't help, like, I mean, people still probably cheat here and there and stuff like that, but you just can't help. But I think it makes it so much easier to, at the very least, get back on the train, get back on the track.
Right.
And um, and then I joined Kilts Mighty Tribe, and I kind of laugh
Yeah.
at that a little bit because this was free all along. And so, and now I'm actually a moderator with Kilts. And,
Oh, nice.
so I'm like one of those Blue Wrench people. I don't go on there that much because of the hours that it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was working. I'm not sure if there's a chance I might be able to go back to work, but there's a little problem with the boss. So I don't know how I feel
Mm.
about that. So, so I mean, but the hours is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I sort of miss a half, by the time I get home, I kind of miss a half an hour. Good thing is it's right by my house,
Right.
so I don't miss
Right.
that much of it. But I mean, to tell my story a little bit, so I found out I had diabetes back when I was 30. And at that time,
And how old are
things
you
were,
now? How
I'm
old are you
52,
now? Oh, are you?
52.
Okay.
Um, so I've had it for over 20 years. I'll be 53 in September, to be exact. And um, basically, I just, everything was fine. I got my, I thought I had my sugars under control. I thought everything was good. And I would see the doctor and control the carbs and all that stuff that they tell you
Yeah.
that you should be doing. It's not, it's they don't tell you to get rid of the carbs. They know carbs are bad, but they sort of like, oh, like you got to tame the beast, and sometimes it's better to avoid the beast. And basically, so for a while, like for at least 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, I was doing pretty much what they recommended, you know. And I would cheat every once in a while because if I'm allowed to have carbs, then theoretically, why can't I have the other stuff? Like,
That's what the doctor says. Yeah.
yeah. So as long as I have my insulin, I should be fine. So I didn't realize it was killing me that much. And unfortunately, for about a year, I was without insurance. So I wasn't really checking things. I was working, but my boss wasn't giving me, and I didn't think enough to do Obamacare. So it was like, okay, so I'm without it for about a year or so. So by the time I did finally get the insurance, that's when things would topple over. And one day I had this problem, like walking at one of my jobs, and my foot gave out. Like it felt like my ankle broke, you know. And I went to the doctor, and it ended up that I had a diabetic foot ulcer. Had to basically get an IV, and the IV was pretty powerful stuff. It actually was like bursting my blood vessels. I'd have to get like four, like every time they did an IV, they had to do a whole. Every time I get the antibiotic, they had to do a whole new IV, and they did it like 4 times a day. So every single time. And I was a
Yeah.
bad stick, and it even worse. So like each time I would get it, I'd be stuck like about 4 or 5 times. So I basically went through all that, and then and I would start having to wear a boot, which was like an offloading boot that kind of like kept your heel up in the air a little bit when you walked, and
Mhm.
that was the only way I could get around. And I also at that time used the knee scooter, so I would put, at that time I did drive, I did have, and I still had my appendages, I still had my toes, and I did that for quite a while. My mom was still alive when that was going on, and then about the fast forward a little bit, I'd say about 2 months, 3 months after my mom passed away, I found a roommate, and she ended up being a nightmare. Long story short, she was a very bad alcoholic. She actually drank 30 cans of beer a day, and she just became she paid the rent, but then
I'm
after a while
sorry.
she got this. But during that time, I was going to rehabs, and obviously I can't be good on my diet with rehab because
Mhm.
as much as you're on carnivore, they still try to, and then the stress too alone. And so I went to rehab, but what happened was the first time when she moved in, about 3 months in, um, I had to get rid of my big toe. So I lost the big toe first, and then that took about 3 months to heal. And in about 6 months after that, I went to the doctor, and I was kind of going to the hospital, like they're sending me home right away, but I was like sort of like getting a little tired of keep on going. I'm like, what can I do to kind of keep from going to the hospital all the time? Why, I'm getting sick all the time. I'm feeling really bad, like this is ridiculous. And he goes, well, I think I would remove the other 4 toes on your foot. So and now he sort of sold it to me in a falsification. I really don't think he meant to. I don't feel that vindictiveness from him, but he pretty much said that it's going to heal pretty quickly because I'm going to do all 4 toes across the line and then just bring the skin in and then sew it up
How
and
did
then
you feel getting that news? Here, I'm going to just cut off your toes.
oh oh God. It's weird. I guess it didn't really surprise me any because I knew things were kind of going on the bad direction, so I wasn't shocked.
Okay.
But yeah, I probably was a little scared, or very scared, I should say. Throughout the whole thing, like my family was with me, and I love my family, but they're also in very much denial. So it
Mm.
was like sort of like, oh, you'll be okay, you'll be, So it wasn't until I joined the community that I was able to talk about what I'm doing, what has happened to me. which is kind
Did
of
you realize that
ironic.
your food had anything to do with this at that point?
I don't know if I felt that my see, I don't know if I really know the answer to that.
Okay.
I did I did see a video before that that sort of like went into my head, and it was a video by Sarah Hallberg.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever. Okay,
Yep.
so um, I actually watched her video, and I've watched it more than once, even since then, and it just, I guess it like opened up a seed
Mhm.
that when it said fat brings down insulin, like lowers the insulin and carbs raise it. Just that simple concept
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
planted in my brain. And I think that that's one of the reasons why carnivore makes sense to me, because what's more fat raising and what's more carb lowering than carnivore, if you
Exactly.
think about it.
Right on.
So, but I think there's always that, like it's always hard for me to kind of like go against other people. So now I'm able to do it a lot more. I mean, there's still one or two people that kind of influence me a little bit, and that's why I only see them at holidays.
Well,
You know what
that's
I
because
mean?
you're hanging out with your tribe.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true.
It's like there's
And
strength in numbers.
yeah. So, but no, even with the tribe, like my sister, like it's just hard for me to say no to my sister. So I kind of like say half yes, half no to her. Like I'll kind of like compromise a little bit. Like, oh, I'll have one piece here, or, one piece there, and I just know that okay, I'll probably suffer a little bit, but then this year I did Easter, and my cheats weren't really that bad. My sugars really didn't go up that high, but it was still, you still kind of feel bad, if you
So
know what I mean.
were you able to do that without, going off the wagon and just carrying on just to have the one or a small
Yeah. I
amount?
mean, I just had basically all I had was she made a homemade lemon cake, so I just had a very, very small slice of that, and I had a little something for my niece, like one piece of like chocolate or something like that, and then I had one thing that she made with a steak, but I also had bread with it. So I just had that was all I had really out of
Because
everything
there's
else
lots of
that she made.
carnivores like myself. I'm like, I'm not going to touch one because if I touch one, I'm probably going to be off for a while. But you could do
Yeah,
that.
no,
So
I
that's
didn't get addicted. It
good.
was more, yeah, it was more like just like that to avoid the arguments. And another thing that
Right.
made me kind of do it too is I have, the family when we get to get-togethers, it's about 12, 13 people, me being the 13th person. So
Yeah.
if they're all against it, which they are, they're not really for the
Yeah.
concept. They know I'm doing it, but they're still like, oh, you don't eat bread, you don't eat pasta, you don't, like that's how can you not do that? So unhealthy not to do that. And I'm like, it's actually healthier for me not to do it.
So it's more to keep the
Or it's
peace.
actually worse for me. Yeah. So it's just a matter of just keeping, yeah, you had to pick your battles basically, and that's what I
Right.
did.
Yep.
And it might happen again. I can't predict the future, but right now, while I'm not with them, I can be as good as I want. So
That's
I just
awesome.
take advantage of the
Fantastic.
time I have. And so far, it's going to actually be 5 months, June 1st, that I've been fully carnivore. Um, because I don't anymore, I don't really count when you do cheat. I think that's ridiculous. Like you cheat one day and then all of a sudden you're not carnivore, you're starting with day one again. That's, this
No,
isn't
not at
apples to
all.
apples.
Not at all. I always liken that to a bicycle rider. So you can have somebody that's a bike rider, like a professional bike rider. They go 50, 60, 100, 200, 300 miles or whatever. They go into Tour de France or whatever. So if they fell off their bicycle, would we say, well, you're not a bike rider because you fell off? You have to start from day one
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
right?
So
That's
the
ridiculous.
ridiculousness of it all
Yeah.
is, I mean, I know they do that with alcoholics, but I think the reason why they do that is because, okay, when you cheat, when you have that one beer, the chances are you're probably going to keep on going, and that's when you have to kind of like start over in the
And
brain.
that's with an
But I don't think we have
addiction,
that with carnivore. Yeah, I don't think we have that with
right?
carnivore. Um, but so I lost my. So what happened was go back to the toes. So it was supposed to be a straight stitch, and ended up this is where he kind of like went a little off what he said, is it actually ended up being totally open. Like I guess something happened where he couldn't close the skin over. So it ended up being totally open. So for over a year, I had an open wound, which caused a lot of issues, you know. I mean, in risk of sounding disgusting, but it's true. It sort of looked like a big thing of hamburger meat on my foot. You know, it was just, you know, we wrap it. We use what was called a wound vac.
Yeah.
And for anybody that doesn't know what a wound vac is, it's basically a sponge that goes over the wound, and then it gets sealed in by this plastic suction, like this plastic piece, and then there's a tube that goes up to it, and it's hooked to like this monitor thing that's this vacuum, and it slowly vacuums in the foot and kind of starts helping to produce the tissue to regrow in your foot. So it's pretty fascinating, but you know, and you can't, like, sometimes you have to take it off, sometimes you have to go without, you know. But at that time, I did have a knee scooter. If I didn't have a knee scooter, I had the offloading shoe, and you had all these other things. Now, I also had a wheelchair for a while because when I was in rehab, when I first got the injury and everything like that, obviously I'm offloading. So it's a little hard and rehabs didn't have the knee walker. So I would have to be in a wheelchair a lot of times. Now, what happened again was, and this is a pretty horrifying story, is right after I go home, when my foot starts to heal, I went home, but I had a really bad back pain. I just got off of rehab, and it was actually the beginning of September I got out of rehab. I was there from July to September at this particular time. I've been there many times, so
Yeah.
you know, this is each time because that we would be here for like 9 hours. But this particular time kind of sticks in my head. And the reason why I know the timeline is because it's around my birthday. And so it was around the beginning of September, actually probably like second week of September, I'd say. And I had a really bad pain in my back. So obviously, you know, I was actually there at the hospital anyway, and I figure I would just go into the ER and have them look at it, you know, because I was there at the hospital because I was getting my foot looked at. At the
Right.
I used to go to what was called the wound care center, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when my podiatrist was there, and he would look at the foot, and they changed the bandage and all that stuff. So I went there, and I went to the ER, and they actually gave me a Tylenol, but through the IV rather than just a Tylenol. They gave it because they said it would go through my system a lot faster this way. I'm like, okay, you know, willing to try anything. You know, I just want to get rid of the pain. And the pain was bad. It was pretty excruciating, but it wasn't like super bad, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I went there and they did the thing, and I said to them, I said, well, the pain's not really dissipated. It's a little bit dissipated in the hip area, but it's not really dissipated in the back area. So, because it was going right down, you know, throughout my whole side and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, well, we already discharged you, so we can't do anything now."
Oh dear.
And and she kind of looked at me, and I actually asked the question. I said, "Well, what if I was having a heart attack? Would you say that to me? Like, would you say, "Oh, we already discharged you, so can you come back with your heart attack tomorrow?"
Oh
Like,
no. No, I
you
mean,
know, like it was
that's
just
okay.
so ridiculous. I'm already
Yeah.
there. Why don't you just do some x-rays? Why don't we go deeper down? Obviously the pain pill didn't help. Maybe we should do a little bit more research on what's going on. You have the equipment, you have, you know, and you're pretty much telling me to go home. So
And
I ended
you
up
were
going home.
discharged before the job was done. They didn't
Right,
check.
exactly. So, oh, the story gets worse, believe
Oh,
it or not, or
okay.
or better on however you want to look at it. So I went home, and about 2, 3 days later, the pain got really, really bad.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I was in a wheelchair this whole time, even though I had to get up because it was like apartment. I did still have to get up and everything like that. I technically wasn't supposed to. My roommate was no help to me, obviously, because she was drunk on the ground, drunk on the floor. And so I ended up going to the hospital again. This time I went through with an ambulance. And they can't take my wheelchair. So I had to, I was pretty much in the gurney. And then I wasn't able to get myself into a wheelchair that they had, but it was broken. So it was like all these problems. One of the things they did to me was they undid my foot, which it was my back that was hurting me, not because I was still bandaged up. So they undid my foot, and they just left me there, basically. Now I was waiting there. I told them I was not going to the bathroom for a while. So they decided to give me a laxative. They didn't give me a laxative, but they gave me a prescription for a laxative. They had me there for about 16 hours, seeing nobody. All of a sudden, a security guard comes up to me, all right, takes me. I'm in the wheelchair because I actually did find a way to wrap my own foot. No one helped me wrap the foot. I actually wrapped it myself with the bad back and everything. And it's not easy to reach your foot, and wrap it properly and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrapped it. I found a way to go to the bathroom. I didn't have to go to the bathroom, but I guess the nervousness made me think I did. And did all that stuff. And I'm in the wheelchair, and a security guard comes up to me, and the doctor points to me and says, "Yeah, he's one." And I had no idea what she was talking about. I knew she was pointing to me. Well, he comes to me, he wheels me outside and says, "Okay, it's time to go home now. Bye." Literally treats me like I'm a homeless person trying to get refuge in the hospital.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so I was not happy with that, obviously. So I went home, didn't really have much of a choice. And I actually did later on at that time I was doing a thing called Motive Care, which was like kind of like free transportation for people on Medicaid.
Okay.
And I actually had to go back to the hospital again to do a follow-up on getting my foot wrapped and everything like that. And so I went to wound care, and I told the nurses there what happened. They're like, and they're appalled right away. They're like, you need to call the administration and tell them what happened. So I called the administration, told them exactly what happened, that they kicked me out and all that, and the type of treatment I had. And I was going to call anyway. I mean, it's good to have that extra recommendation, but
Oh,
you know what
yeah.
you know. And so I called them up, told them. So now fast forward a little bit. Now it's closer to my birthday. It's actually the 19th of September, and I can't even move. I'm literally like they literally had to pick me up. Like I was so bad, I couldn't move at all. And I talked to the doc, I saw the ER doctor, and he's a little bit more proactive. He actually gave me an MRI. He gave me a CAT scan. He did all that stuff. Well, they found the reason why my back was the way it was because there was actually an infection inside my spine, like literally inside my spine, corroding my spine, and a MRSA infection. And it caused me to not, it caused me not to be able to, like I couldn't walk, I couldn't even sit up. I was so bad, I
Horrible
literally could not
times.
do
Wow.
anything. Um, and then so I was obviously in the wheelchair with this, and I actually not actually no, I'm going to go against that because I was so bad I couldn't even sit in a wheelchair. I literally like nurses would have to pull me up in bed. I had to have help, and I'm just going to say it this way, and you can picture what you want to picture. Any way you can think of, I had to have help with. I
Yeah.
could hardly eat. Now during this time, this is why I say it was forced in a way. I actually started fasting, like about 4 days in. I was like, maybe if I try a fast, because it's always helped me in the past and everything. So I did a 4-day fast, and then I was getting ready to eat again. But then when they put me in the hospital, first of all, it was hard for me to eat because I was in so much pain on that fourth day. But there was nothing I could do about it. My doctor wanted to go into the foot, and I guess for some reason he wanted to do it surgically, not just an X-ray, because he wanted to make sure. I guess he needed to go deeper into it. And And I could see why, because in my thought process, I have an open wound,
Hmm.
you know, or it was open for quite a while. It was starting to close at this point, but I had an open wound, and you can't help but think, did the wound cause the infection? Like, did the infection
Well,
come in
yeah,
through,
that would be
you
my
know,
thought, but
for over
what
a
do I
year
know?
of having this open wound for almost a year, you know, the possibilities of that, I mean, that's probably the most logical explanation than anything, you know. So I'm sure that's what he was thinking, like, oh, let's make sure the infection's not in the foot, you know. No, I think the foot did cause it into the back, but ended up there was no infection in the foot, like sort of like that carrier type thing, you know.
Hmm.
And so so what happened was I fasted for 4 days, but then he wanted to do an I think it's called NPR or NPO. I always get that confused. Which is
Nothing by
like
mouth.
yes, nothing by mouth,
Mhm. And feel.
and basically no liquid, nothing. So it was, and normally it's just for 12 hours they do it for, but it ended up being 36
Oh, wow.
because they had to cancel the one day, so it ended up being like the
But you had an
24
IV
hours.
during this time.
I did, yes, but technically I still wasn't eating anything by mouth, you know.
Right.
And so I think they're giving me saline and stuff like that, but nothing
Hmm.
spectacular. So in a way, I was fasting for those 2 days,
Yeah.
dry fast, you know. So like now it's up to 6 days, and then when I got out of the operating room, I was so sick that anything I tried to eat didn't stay up, you know. So it ended up being about 9 day fast, but I always call it a forced fast, and I think with fasting you have to be mentally into it, and I was not mentally into fasting, you know. So it was sort of the wrong way to fast. Let's put it that way.
And
Didn't
nonetheless,
work.
it was benefiting your body.
It probably was healing in some way. Yes, it just wasn't
Mhm.
benefiting my stomach as much because I had really bad gastroparesis, and that probably didn't help
Yeah.
my gastroparesis. You know, and at one time I took omeprazole, and I actually stopped it back in February. I actually stopped it, and now I'm fine. Now I don't have to take the omeprazole anymore. I think my stomach's more intuitive to actually having meats. You know, my A1C when I first found out about my feet was 13.5.
Wow.
When that time when when I thought my foot broke, my ankle broke, was I found out it was 13.5. Now, now when it went up again, like it went all the way down to about 7.2, but then went back up to 8.9. And that's when I think my journey of the YouTube started. And that's why I tell my story and everything like that. And I even mentioned about how like the cheating probably did not help, obviously going to my sister's house, you know, like all these, and that the community is really what's helping me. Now it's at 7.6. And what makes it even more of a miracle, and I think a miracle is not really a strong word if you ask me, is now my highest blood sugars. Now I had the flu. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I actually had the flu like last week, 2 weeks ago, and my highest blood sugar was about like 160 was my highest blood sugar. Now, if I had a cold a year ago, 2 years ago, my highest would have been closer to 350, almost 400. You know,
Wow.
so much going
So a
down.
tremendous
And
improvement with carnivore.
yeah, and then there was an issue that I think actually helped, not really helped me, but there was an issue that I had where for some reason the pharmacy, when I ordered short-term acting insulin, they gave me long-term acting insulin. Well, I can't
Oh,
substitute long acting for short acting or vice
no.
versa. So I was talking to Dr. Phil from SBG. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Hmm.
I was talking to him a little bit what happened. He goes, wait, for about a week, I didn't have any short-term acting insulin. I just had the long term. He goes, wait, for you've you've been in your sugars only went up to like 150, 160. I'm like, yeah. He goes, he's like, I think that sounds like you're becoming insulin sensitive, and I think things are starting to turn around for you on the insulin front. And he actually told me, he goes, and I just did that today. And the receptionist is actually going to talk to the doctor. But I still have to, most likely I'll just have to kind of wait until the appointment and then like in July, but then just get recommendation of like how to do a sliding scale or whatever. But he's like, you need to cut back on your insulin because now you're more at risk of getting it too low instead of
Yeah.
too high.
So do you wear a CGM or do you test your blood
Yeah.
sugars regularly or what
Uh,
do you
right
do?
now, right now it's at 123.
Okay.
It's at 123
Yep.
right now, um, which is fine. Um, I I did have a beef stick. You know Lewis, right? From Healing
Yes.
Humanity.
Yes. Yeah.
He actually's been very generous, and I ran out of CGM sensors, and he actually sent me some extra ones that he had.
Wow.
So
Well,
he
like you were
actually gave
saying
them to me.
before, the carnivore community is very generous. And the
Yeah,
reason we're generous is because we know the healing power of carnivore or a
yeah.
proper human diet.
Well, I think also too, I think the reason why we're a little bit more generous too is because we've been criticized so much, and it's sort of like that like mind, it's like, you know, and I think that that's why we're sort of generous too, because it's like no one else is there for you, And
Right.
I love,
So
like I
we
said, I love
support
my
each other.
family and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like this support team and everything. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, so far it's been pretty amazing. And like I said, I've had many things that have happened to me. The past 2 years has probably been the worst, I mean, a lot of stress, a lot of mentality, and physical too. But I'm getting better. I I actually did start working again. Unfortunately, I was driving my roommate's car and ended up that kind of fell through. So I no longer can work at that store, but I was trying to work at this store over here, but there's just this like big thing with me and the manager over there, like this little conflict going on.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really sure. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I can handle the 8 hours, because before I start working, the most I'd be standing up would be an hour, and that'd
Right.
be pushing it, and to stand and walk around. And people are like, oh, well, why don't you just sit in a chair? Why don't you just, well, it doesn't work that way. Like I still have to run.
Mhm.
I still have to, even if I stayed by the register, I still have to get up to get the cigarettes
That's
for
right.
the customer,
Yeah. I mean, there's some jobs
and
you can do that, other ones you just can't. So,
yeah, it's just impossible. So, I mean, can I sit for a couple seconds for a few minutes when there's nobody in there and stuff like that, and kind of like in between a segment? Sure, but that's even rare. And the other job I was running around a lot more, and this store I don't really run around that much. But it's like just sort of this conflict with the person, that I just need to have some answers before I actually commit to working for her. And I'm not sure if it's even worth me working. I make enough money to pay my bills to do. This would be just for savings. So, like, is it more important that I actually just continue healing and just get myself to be a lot better and better than I was? But I think there's still a lot
right.
more healing to go.
Yeah. I mean, but good for you that you were willing to do that because a lot of people
Yeah.
wouldn't have been willing to even try it. But you tried it. And if it works, great.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then you kind of change things up a little bit, right?
Yeah. And doesn't mean that, I mean, I still make a little extra money, so I can still save. Right now, I'm saving for the Boston trip. So
Yes.
I already paid for the ticket. I already paid for the ticket. Now, remember, are you going to the Boston trip or no?
No, I was just with Healing
Oh, okay.
Humanity in Ontario, though. I'm in Canada.
That must have
So,
been
I,
amazing.
yeah, it was amazing, totally.
Hmm.
And Dr. Kiltz was there, and he's just so encouraging, so life-giving, and it was just an awesome meeting. And then meeting so many other carnivores. I didn't even know that there were any other carnivores hardly in Canada. I thought they're all in the
I think
States.
I really think that we're everywhere. Like I know Rick, Charger Mopar keeps on saying that there's nobody in Miami and there's nobody there. I have a feeling there's more carnivores in Miami than
I'll
he
bet you there is.
thinks.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's probably more in New Jersey than I think. It's just a matter of just finding them or whatever. I mean, there was a couple that I found, and I would say like, "Hey, I'm from Wall, New Jersey, or whatever," and then they would just kind of like So I think it's not just a matter of finding them, it's a matter of finding ones that would be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Like maybe we should talk to each other, or
Right.
whatever. Not everybody's going to be super friendly. Even carnivores are not going to be super friendly. And I think that's mostly the ones that are just starting out, and once you get
Well, and
into
I
it and
think
everything.
too, for some people, it's just so normalized that they're just going on with their life, and this is what I do, and that's it. But it is
Yeah.
nice when you can connect with somebody close by in the meantime, or
Right. Which is why I think
just
Lewis connected with me a little bit because he's from New York and I'm from New Jersey.
oh,
So,
okay.
there's that sort of like he's from Queens and I'm from like I don't know if you know the area of New Jersey, but I'm in the like the shore area like Asbury Park,
Okay.
um, which is where Bruce Springsteen played
Oh, okay.
at the Stone Pony, Which I don't know if you know this or not, but like Dr. Kelts, I think is like Bruce Springsteen's cousin, so he relates to
Oh,
that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
How about
I
that?
think if I remember the story correctly, I think he's related to Bruce Springsteen in some way or another. So,
Yeah.
like when I mentioned that, he's like, "Oh, okay." But it seems like Dr. Kilt is everywhere. Like,
He
he's like at
is.
all the meetings.
He
Like,
he is.
I think they cloned him and just put him in every spot.
Well, he's so committed to the cause. I mean, he's donating $100,000 or matching $100,000 for the movie. So Healing
Right.
Humanity, the movie, and it's a
Mhm.
documentary that's being produced,
Yeah.
which that's going to be awesome. And then a series after that, because so many people have received healing in their bodies from so many things, just as you're sharing your story. Many others have too. And I'm like, wow, the commitment from him. And of course, he flies his own plane, so he does kind of take off and go everywhere. But it's just a
Yeah.
pleasure to
It's a
see
matter of
him.
finding where do you land, But yeah. But it's
Yeah,
just funny how he's like, I mean, obviously he's going to be in Boston, but it's obviously he's going to be in Boston because it's Kills that's actually throwing that meetup. So he sort of kind of has to be there, because it's
and
his
the other
thing,
thing
it's
is,
his show.
he's a fertility doctor. I mean, he
Oh
uses
God, yeah,
regular treatments, but he also uses really metabolic treatments for his patients. And I'm like, come
yeah,
on, guys, if you want to have a baby, you got to contact Dr. Kiltz, or at least like you just got it,
yeah.
you know?
It's just
Um,
and just I mean, just this whole thing. I mean, I was on. I don't know if you've been on him yet or not, and they're all three of them are fascinating. But I was actually, I think it was May 9th that I was actually on Dr. Kiltz.
I saw it.
So did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and like Ali is really nice. Dr. Nelson's helped me in so many ways,
Dr. Nelson is
even
awesome too.
before that.
Yeah.
And you gotta love all of them. And then I've been on a lot of interviews. I've actually been interviewed by Carrie.
Yes, I've seen that.
It's not
I've
out
seen a
yet,
few of
but
them out there.
yeah. Well, those were the ones you're thinking of are definitely the open mic nights. I've been on them. And then I was also on an actual interview with
No, I
him.
saw actual interviews.
Yeah,
I don't know
no, I'm
which
saying
ones,
like I've
but a
only been
number of
on
them.
one actual interview,
Hmm.
but I've had the open mic nights. I did like two or three of them. So,
Yeah.
I count them because he's still asking me the question. I'm still telling him about my story. And things have changed a little bit. I was also on Dave Mack.
Yep.
I was also on DC. I always he changes his name all the time, but it's DC something. And then I was also on Carnivore Transformer. He's new like us. He's a lot newer.
Okay.
So he's a little bit younger into the not as
Okay.
wide range as as Carrie and then Nia Nova.
Yep.
I was on her podcast. I had an interview with her. And of course, Dante. I had an interview with
And
him.
Dante, yeah. Which is
Yep.
Frignal Freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to really say the name, because like you're so personalized with them now that it's like you just call them by their first
I'm
names,
just saying the name in case anybody's listening. They're thinking,
Oh,
who is
yeah,
that?
no, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying why I keep on forgetting to say the actual name because I'm just so I
That's okay.
it's like he
No
calls,
problem.
we talk to each other we talk to each other on Zoom, so it's like
We know the circle, right? We know all the
yeah,
people that are in there, not
and of
everyone,
course,
but yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I got interviewed by Carnivore teacher,
Yeah.
John Laspina.
Okay.
Trying to think of anybody else. I think I mentioned Adam, right? It just hasn't come out yet. Adam Lacey.
I don't think you mentioned him yet, but
Oh,
Adam.
okay. Well, then I'm mentioning him now.
Yeah.
I have been interviewed by Adam Lacey. Just for some reason it hasn't come out yet, even though I had the interview about 2 days after Nia. So I would
Okay.
think it'd be coming out soon. But Adam's so busy that it's probably just one of those things.
Well, that's the thing, right? If you're going to edit or do whatever, it might take a little while. So, Thomas, can
Yeah.
I ask you now, what do you eat in an average day? Like, what is it?
Um,
How many times? How much?
well, it depends on how I'm doing. I was doing for a while there, I was doing the priming with
Yes.
Coach Raymond. And
Yeah.
so I was eating a lot of meals. And I even have videos based on all the meals I was eating, like the snacks and meals I was eating. So it's mostly like the snacks would be pork rinds with some sour cream. And I got like what I got was I actually got hot sauce to kind of like entice the palate a little bit more. And I would actually put the hot sauce in the sour cream and make like this like hot, you
Like a
know,
dip.
yeah. And so I would do that. And then I would actually, but that's at that time. Now, mostly every once in a while, and I'm sure you guys have seen me eat it. I would defrost like a steak, or not even defrost it. I actually cook it from frozen right into the oven and then cook it and it'd be nice and medium rare
You
when
use
it
oven
came
or
out.
air fryer?
Depends. Sometimes the air fryer is not big enough, so I would have to use the
Oh,
oven.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, but if it was big enough, then I would use the air fryer. But when I do my burgers, I actually I put them in frozen into the air fryer. I put them in 15, for about 15 minutes at about 340. And I put them in there and they would be cooked pretty much where I want them to be. And
Yeah.
then I would actually eat them. And it's like these burger patties I get from Walmart. They're like in the box because
Yep.
delivery wise, they charge extra when you do weighted items for some reason. So if you get like something that's of a weight, like steaks and stuff like that, they actually charge extra. Like I'll give you an example. Like say I get a steak for $10 and I order it to be delivered. Well, they'll charge me $23, $25 to get that steak in. Now
Mm.
times that by like, because I shop monthly. So that's a lot of my paycheck, for all this extra for deliveries. So what I do is if I can find a way to get to Walmart or get to shop or get to wherever I need to go, I'll get the weighted items, get the steaks then and just put them in, like just take an Uber and just do it that way. And one time I went with my roommate, but he unfortunately doesn't have his car anymore. So that's basically what I do. But when I do a delivery, I do stuff where it's non-weighted. And so a box of burgers, and they're 100% beef. There's no additives or anything to them. So I would just get everything, get butter, get this, get that just keep it very simple. And I sort of had to do that when she was still around. Like I had to do things very simple because I was pretty much stuffed in my room. Like
Mhm.
she was so bad. So I just did everything that would take like very quickly. Like but yeah, I took a big cast iron skillet. I put like 2 or 3 burgers with some foil on the bottom in the oven for like 20 minutes at that time. And
I
then
think we're
it was
we're
easy.
losing, I think, your voice there a little bit.
Is it better now?
Okay, talk for a
You got
moment.
a
We'll
little
see.
static. Hopefully that will.
I was just cracking a
I'm
little
just
bit,
moving.
but I think that we got a pretty good picture of what's going on. So, do you plan on staying carnivore forever? Oh, there's always technical things. This is how these Zooms work. These recordings. There's so many technical things. It's just a fast learning curve, and we're managing. I actually think Thomas may have frozen, and that's okay too. It's been a real pleasure to hear his story. And everyone's got a story. And I know some people think that, it's orthorexia, you're just eating meat or something like that. But, I've always heard don't knock it till you try it. So if you're brave enough, a month, just eat beef and water. Give it a try. It's worked for thousands upon thousands and thousands of people. And if you're struggling with a health condition, whether it's a neurological disorder or you've got neuropathies, well, it's a neurological, or if you've got mental health issues, heart issues, kidney issues, diabetes, as Thomas was sharing with us, any of those kind of things, try it. Try it. There are doctors out there that are supporting the carnivore diet. They've looked at the science. They found faults in some of the science that's been done for vegetables because vegetables all contain poisons, basically, in different amounts. And I know some people say, yeah, but you can use it for the hormetic effect of the vegetables. And perhaps that's true. But you know how much that is? It's a very, very little bit. And some people respond to that very negatively. So you need to know yourself, your own body, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and give carnivore a try. And if you're not that brave, which is fine, try doing just lower your carbohydrates because you don't want your sugar to be very, very high. You want your sugars to come down. So lower the carbohydrates. Maybe go down to keto. Take your carbs down to 20 grams or less. When I first started, it was a long time ago with Atkins induction. And then with my first group that I was ever in, or the first one I was listening to, really wasn't listening to, it was from a book. And it was with Dr. Robert Atkins. I think it was the New Diet Revolution or something like that, with Dr. Eric Westman. So Dr. Eric Westman, Amy Berger, they're great supports if you're just starting. If you want to go all out carnivore, then you can try healinghumanity.life. Try that group. There's Steak and Butter Gang. If you're interested in priming, as Thomas was describing, that just means that you're going to go for a period of time of eating as much as you can, which is a kind of nice challenge. And then you go into fasting. And then there's other groups, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, Kelly Hogan, Dr. Robert Kiltz, the list go on and on. Primal Health with Rena. There's so many out there support groups to go to. And so I do encourage you that if you're on your own trying carnivore, getting into a tribe, getting into the one that or more than one that you really identify with, because they're each a little bit different. Judy Cho, another one, Laura Spath. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I don't want to leave people out. Dr. Nelson and Dr. Hampton. Oh, Dr. Berry. Dr. Berry's been around like forever and a day. It's almost ancient. He's not ancient, but he's been around a long time. But get into a group where you're going to find more knowledge, not just knowledge, but support to recover your health. Now, Thomas may be back. He may not be. I'm not sure because I don't see his face. Oh, there's his face. Thomas, we lost you for a moment. But we're going to conclude this hour. I just want to know if you have anything.
Still feel pretty static.
Anything that you would like to share with the listeners? Just some, if we can.
I think that, and it probably just like I said, everybody else. I think that if you're reluctant, obviously you're going to you're going to have a hard time with this. But I think that if you are even curious about the carnivore diet, I think you get what harm are you doing to give it at least a month? Try it out, see how you feel.
Okay.
Now, personally, I don't think a month is enough. You know, I think if you really see some changes, I think you have to do a minimum of 90 days. You know, I mean, I didn't start any changes recently until the late days. So I, sorry about that. I'm actually, what I'm doing is
Okay,
I'm
we're
actually
not
taking
really
it.
hearing you, but I did hear you say that if you're even a little bit curious, I've got it written down below too. If you're even a little bit curious, just give Carnivore a try and see how it works for you. Get connected with other carnivores, get that support, be a support, and you're going to find a totally loving community. And we don't judge each other either. There are carnivores that maybe, as Thomas was saying, once in a while you might have a little bit of something or another. Hey, that's cool. Or you might be like me. I have my decaf coffee. I'm still carnivore. And some people may judge it and say no, but for the most part, we just don't do that. We accept each other the way that we are, and we go with that. So, Thomas, I do want to thank you for being here, and we will see you around Carnivore Town, which is like everywhere. Thank you so much for taking this time to be here. I don't know if you have any website, but Thomas is out there everywhere. And I encourage you to kind of jump into one of the groups that I mentioned earlier while Thomas was off and find out some more. Check it out. So, Thomas, I'm going to stop the recording here. Thank you for coming.